thinking about how landlords and property owners can do a better job in terms of meeting the needs of tenants, specifically students, is to understand that they may be really new to this process, that they may need some hand-holding. And what I like to do is think, if this was my son or daughter, how would I want someone to treat them? And that tends to take a little bit of edge off of me and soften me up.
When I was 19, moving into my first house in Arcata, the landlord of the house took me and my friend who was moving into the house with me to meet his tenants that were on the same property and introduced us to all of the neighbors. And so we actually knew them on a first name basis from the day we moved in. So I think that landlord went out of his way to help create a community within the college students and the older neighbors on that block.
Not everyone has the same preparation for college and for renting. And many times first-generation college students haven't had the opportunity to learn some of the things that some of the other students have. And it's really important to be patient and be willing to coach people and provide information that they need and not get angry if there's anyone who doesn't have the information that they need about how to go about renting a house.
If you are a landlord and you're having issues with a tenant, if they're not paying on time or they can't maintain the property to your standards, being able to have an actual conversation with that tenant or that landlord is incredibly important. Specifically for students, often they're full-time students, they have to work in order to survive and pay their rent and be able to eat throughout the month. If you have financial aid, that doesn't quite cover everything. I would love for landlords to be understanding when there's a late payment and to have effective communication with their tenants about it.
Walk them through the process and give them some tips up front about the rent and the rent being paid on time, and just rather than handing over that rental agreement once it's signed and go, okay, great, here's the keys, see ya. It's like, hey, you know what, here's the rent is due on this day. Here's what happens if it's late. You know, here's how you can communicate. Here's some of the ways we can talk about this. You know, and here's my expectations as a landlord of you. And landlords, you know, just being as clear and honest in their communication as possible with the tenants.
The care that goes into selecting a tenant, as well as the relationship between that tenant. You want them to be around for a long time. You don't want a high turnover because then you have to build that relationship and find the perfect tenant all over again.
If you want to have really successful experience with inexperienced renters, which includes some students, you need to be willing to coach and teach. And if you're really not comfortable with that role, then you probably would do better to market to a different rental population.
I would say one of the most important aspects of being a landlord for me personally is the communication with tenants. I'm not going to be your best friend. I'm not interested in being your best friend. But I do want to meet my obligations to you as a tenant, which means that you have a safe, functional, environment to live in. And if I'm made aware of issues, I'm going to take care of them.